to work.
Yes.
How does that
Okay.
sound? All right, so I'm gonna put up our levy, correct? Yes?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
So there are many people that will point out that the differences, and you'll notice this and look for it in the other translations as well, that it feels very much like the verses 1 through 7, which we got through yesterday, and with that very famous opening line, and it's famous in Latin too, although I don't know the Latin. Hashemayim misaprim kavod el, the heavens declare the glory of God. This is a super famous line. I cannot emphasize that enough. And I think Ira is going to introduce us to one of the pieces, to the Haydn piece, because this line, just think of the opportunities to what that means. And then verse 8 goes, so there's quite a contrast between verses 1 through 7, which are very beautiful descriptions of the natural world being the voice of the beauty of God, of the power of the holiness, of whatever word you want to use for God. And again, and then 8 becomes quite focused on a more, if 1 through 7 is a universal, naturalistic, I'm using all different kinds of words to trigger your thinking. Verses 8 through 15 are a little bit more particularistic, or a little bit more about the Torah and Adonai and Jewishness, or the question, Alter and others, and I think Sarna talks about these as being possibly 2 different Psalms that were conflated or combined in an editorial process. And that is not the most interesting question to me, of course. It ends up being the most interesting question. So what does it mean to have this together? So let's look at that. So 8, as I said, this is used liturgically as well. So this is Sarah. Okay. That 8 starts with the word Torah. So notice, verse 2 starts with Hashemayim, which is the heavens. And by heavens, it doesn't just mean sky, it means everything. It's just a very big, broad word. And then 8 begins with Torah. But now this is very interesting. Torah Yud He Vav He, the Torah, the word Torah means teachings. It can also mean the specific, it can mean general, it means teachings, but Torah, of course, is also the specific teachings. But the reason we see, again, the Torah as opposed to Torah with a hey, the hey changes into a taf for when the end of the word has to get declined for various reasons. In this case, it becomes the possessive, or smichut in the Hebrew grammatical form. So it becomes Torah, Yud He Vav He becomes Torat, Yud He Vav He, making it a possessive, making the Torah of Yud He Vav He. T'mima, the teachings of Yud He Vav He, T'mima, B'shivat Nefesh, restores the soul. Edut, I said, we went through this yesterday, I'm just doing this quickly, so Edut Yud He Vav He, the witness or the the Ne'emanah are here they use the word faithful. Emunah is faith or belief, wisdom, etc. Okay, so 9. Again, we now have descriptions for the rest of the Psalm of what the Torah of Yud He Vav He will teach us. What we absorb by having Yud He Vav He, these teachings. What I see is that this is not different than Hashemayim Misaprim. It's just the expression of it through our tradition. So Pikudei Yud He Vav He, the precepts, Yud He Vav He, Yesharim are straight. Yesharim means, Yashar means straight, but means direct, not straight in sexual orientation, but Yesharim meaning direct, no, not back and forth. They really are direct. Misamchei lev. Here's the word sameach, like simcha, lismoach, simcha, or simchas. Everybody has heard that word in different forms. Making misamchei lev, makes the heart joyous, rejoicing the heart. So it is a happy thing. It's a joyful thing. It's not a heavy conditioned, hard thing. It will, by developing this real personal, this deep relationship with Yud He Vav He, there will be joy. It is not just a burden. Mitzvat Yud He Vav He. So here is the biblical parallelism. Pikudei, which is one form of precepts or things to follow. Mitzvat, the mitzvah of Yud He Vav He bara is clear. Me'irat ne'inayim, and will irat einayim are eyes. So again, we have the contrast with lev, heart, in the first half. Einayim, eyes, will enlightened, will bring, me'ir is to bring light, literally Light, will bring light to the eyes. So this is a lot of joy, and for sure this is giving us the description of what, if we experience life this way, we will have joy in our hearts and we will be enlightened. We will have the ability to see, we will have insight. 10 verse Yud, Pasuk Yud, verse 10, Yirat Yud He Vav He, the awe, Yirah is awe, A-W-E, or fear. Yirat Hashem, in other words, feeling a reverence for the holy. Tahora, now this is again, all these parallelisms we see. This is an amazing poem for the parallelisms and the number of different words which describe this. Tahora is pure, like we had Tamimah, Ne'mana, all these words of pure. Here's Tahora Omedet La'ad, standing together, or standing for La'ad, forever. La'ad is a forever. Mishpatei Yud He Vav He, another poetic parallelism. The laws or the precepts of Yud He Vav He, Emet, truth. So together, just. So all these very, very, very positive words, hard to argue with, right? Pure, truth, just, making the heart joyous, enlightening the eyes. 11, more desirable than gold. Nechmadim mezahav. Zahav is gold. Umipaz rav. Even this very pure gold. Sweet, metukim, motek is a very common modern Hebrew word that you'd say to somebody means sweetie. Motek, here's metukim, sweeter than what? Than honey, udvash. So going to so again, we see repetition of this is such a beautiful thing, and all these different descriptions that talk about the heart, the eyes, the taste. 12, Gam Avdecha, Eved is a servant. So Avdecha is Eved Shelcha. Your servant, Nizhar Bahem, is warned or instructed or Bahem. Bishamrim Ekev Rav. Is it, yeah, Shamrim. Is that right? Shomrim, yeah. Shomrim. So shomer, like we do shmirah when somebody has died, or shomer Shabbat, or lishmor Shabbat. So protection or observing them, ekev rav. Here it translates great reward. We're going to leave that. So 13, shkiyot, mistakes. So here's a very interesting. So from 8 to 12, we have these very powerful descriptions of the positive nature of aspiring to be close and closer and closer to holiness, to God. 13, shkiot, mistakes. Miyavin, who understands them? Miyavin. So this is like the word a maven in Yiddish is from the Hebrew word lahavin, to understand. Who discerns mistakes? He translates shkiot, miyavin, who understands mistakes. Menistarot, nakeni, from nistarot, the same shoresh as Esther, nistar, from things that are hidden, cleanse me. We're going to hold on a little bit of this. Restrain, gum, so 14. Restrain your servant from presumptuous act, chashoch evdecha. Don't let them, al yimshalu vi. Limshol is to rule over. Memshala is a government. So don't let these things rule over me. What is it referring to? The presumptuous acts, or what it says things done in the darkness, or mistakes. You'll see translators do very interesting things with this section. Then I will be complete. Here, don't let them rule over me. V'nikiti mi pesha rav, and cleanse me. Pesha is like a sin or a wrongdoing. I will be cleansed from wrongdoing. So you can feel in this, there are different sections. Section 1 was this beautiful description of God's presence in the natural world. And we can, if we notice the natural world, we are experiencing holiness. Then this section that describes what will be if we live a life connected. And then 13 shifts again that talks about, you know what, but we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And how do we live with the fact that we make mistakes? And then 15 is the coda for the psalm. Verse 15, which should be a very well-known verse to you. Harold, can you go down a little bit? Can we?
Sorry, I tried. Do you see it
I
now?
think it's on another page.
There is. Hold on. Let me.
Yeah, it's on a separate page.
Flip on the PDF.
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
Perfect. So, Yehiu l'ratzon imre fi, may there be favor from the, and imre fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali. May there be favor for the words of my mouth. Remember, there was so much in the beginning of this psalm about speech, about words, about language. May the words of my mouth, the hegyon, and the meditations or murmurings or focus libi of my heart, always be lifanecha, before you. Yud He Vav He, the holiest one, the source of all strength and all power. Suri, my rock, literally. Remember we talked about sur, a rock, this foundation, this sense, may Yud He Vav He be my foundation, V'goali, and my redeemer. Now, if you're in the chorus, you'll remember you sing this when you do the Dani Masang. It's found at the end of every Amidah. And Joyce has brought many different settings of this, both in English and in Hebrew, because it's such a very, very, very powerful piece, a very powerful pasuk. All right, let's pause for a second of just see if there are any questions or comments about this. And then we're going to go to Chavruta with this fresh in your thinking.
Let's see who's got her hand up. Linda Solomon.
Yes, I did. Okay, here comes one of my two other questions. Actually, I have two questions. First of all, in verse 10, Levi says the awe of Adonai is clean. In other places I've seen it said the fear of the Lord or of Adonai
Right.
is pure. That really disturbed me when I first read it.
Fear, you mean the word fear?
Yeah, it really
Yeah,
did
that's why
something to
Levi
me.
uses the word awe. Yira can mean fear, but I think it's like Yamim Noraim, the days of awe. That's the same word. I think the
Okay.
concept is deep reverence, and awe has a little fear in it too. Of course, there's a sense of, but I like, obviously, because the word fear conjures up images that I think are obstacles.
Right, and I don't want
So,
to be afraid of God.
right, Yamim Noraim, the exact same words, and that's why we translate it as days of awe.
Good. And then my other one is, what came first, the Psalm or the Amidah?
The psalm.
Okay.
The Amidah is quoting this psalm.
Thank you.
Almost anytime you see sentences that you recognize from the Psalms in liturgy, and they are all over, besides where full Psalms are used, like Hallel. There are many, many places where a verse from a Psalm is used. Most of liturgy is from the medieval period, although not all. There are some things that are older. And just like you've probably developed some connections to a verse here or there, if you were sitting down to add a prayer, you would probably use some verses that have become meaningful to you. Okay, let's have one more comment and then
Lisa
we're gonna
Brown.
Fisher.
Lisa Brown.
So just interesting that God's words aren't mentioned here. Right? Everything else about God is mentioned, but the words are now our words. So that's
Aha, beautiful, Lisa. That's gorgeous. Beautiful. I love that. All right, so what we're going to do now that we've kind of done one quick overview, and there are many, many issues in it, like what Michael Goldstein said, that some have talked about the first part of the psalm is a reference to the sun god that was common in the ancient Near East, and the second part of the psalm is changing that into a monotheistic Judaism. I'm less worried about that stuff. Like, as you hear, that I want to find meaning, even though that it might be that the psalmist was quoting references that were contemporary. The question becomes for me, what does the psalm mean for us today? But it's a very interesting discussion that Sarna and Alter have. But so we're going to go for 20 minutes into Chavruta with 2 or 3 people. And then we're going to come back together, and you're going to be looking at the Fisher with Levi in your mind, and Levi has the Hebrew. So if you know Hebrew, you can go back to it while you're looking at the Fisher. But read the Fisher back and forth. Everybody, if there are 2 or 3 people in your group, just take one sentence at a time, read it out loud, see what you think, and try and get through the whole Fisher and see how he handles the many different issues that we've raised here, or that are raised by the psalm. And then we're going to have a beautiful music out that Ira has prepared. Nice to see you and Kenneth together, Ira. Okay, so Tasha's going to send All right, everybody, how was it? We don't have a lot of time, but just.
It was good.
Is
Great.
that my sound?
I think it might be
No, I think it's Monica's.
Monica's a little scratchy.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so let me just hear very quickly from a couple of people, just how it went and what you learned. Or
Stein. Oh, sorry.
what? Susan Stein. Hi, Susan.
Stein.
Hi, Rabbi. It was really good talking. I felt inadequate in terms of being able to add anything to the discussion, but I really enjoyed talking with Lise and sort of coming clean about some of my concerns. And so I think we had a nice discussion. I found it stimulating. I'm not sure she did.
Listen, I will say this to my last dying breath. Everybody's reaction to the Psalms is perfect. Everybody's response, whether it's disbelief, anger, disgust, outrage, love, beauty, whatever it is, it's about having a reaction and having an authentic reaction and staying with it, not giving up. And I promise you that it's worth it. Okay. But, okay. So let me hear from other people besides.
Yael Bat Chava.
Hi, I got to study with Shari and Debbie, which was wonderful. One thing we talked about is the word zedim in line 14, in verse 14, Gam zedim chasoch avdecha. The word zadon, we looked up the translation, is wickedness, malice, evil.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
zedim are the people who do evil, etc. But both Levy and Fisher don't talk about people who do bad. They talk about bad acts, presumptuous acts by Levy, and I don't have Fisher right in front of me.
Yeah.
So we thought that was
Interesting.
And related to intentionality. So something bad, but with intention.
Thank you.
Saul.
So we noted the fact that Fisher does not talk specifically about Torah and the orders and anything like that. It's your ways, whatever that seems to be. And that by doing that, it makes this, the psalm is not really 2 separate parts. It becomes all one.
Yep.
Because your ways could just be the earth. the way the earth and the skies and everything else. And if we were to just do that,
Uh-huh.
Wow.
okay.
Beautiful, Saul. Great noticing of that. And by the way, altar does say willful men, Yael. So altar who tries to, again, and that's why it's so much fun to look at multiples. Altar is always going to be the one, and for those of you, this is the altar, who's going to try and stay closest to the Hebrew. The others are trying to find meaning for themselves, which is also legitimate, completely legitimate. But that's why it's fun to see, and what you did by being able to look at the Hebrew itself, now you appreciate when Alter says willful men, he's trying to do exactly what Yael is talking about. And the others say, no, that's not the point for me.
Sherry Bradfield?
Go ahead.
Well, we were with Linda and Michael Goldstein.
Linda Solomon Smith.
Yeah.
It was
And-
great.
And one of the things we noticed was in the first stanza, we explored this idea that maybe this was a refutation of the idea of other gods, and that, day and night, all that, their spoken language, but their voice falls silent. And then in the second stanza, we're talking about your pattern, presumably Adonai's, there you have eloquent expression. So creating that contrast between the silence and the eloquent expression.
Interesting, very interesting.
We talked about a lot, but that's one of
That's one of them.
Randy Sarkoff?
So we have rooted with Jeremy, Shep, and myself. I'll point out two things. Specifically for me, the last verse 14, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable unto thee. I've known that and memorized it since I was 10 years old. And now it has more meaning to me, as do a lot of things, knowing where it came from and studying from the Psalm.
Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that like thrilling? I find it so thrilling. It's just like, ooh, yeah.
This is
Led
it's
into
awesome.
a secret. Beautiful.
And the reward, I just wanted to point out, the group talked a lot about verse 11 and 12. That the reward of knowing the presence of Yud-Hey Vav-Hey is sweeter than honey and better than gold. That really stood out to us.
Ira or Kenneth?
Hi, it's Kenneth. We had a wonderful conversation with Peter and Dorothy. And among many things, we were struck by this psalm, and particularly Fisher. This is the opposite of the vengeful God,
Yes.
demanding perfection.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Psalm 15 particularly, where Ira pointed out, where to enter the tent, you have these boxes to check. So this line, who is free from all error? I mean, that's so human that we're all imperfect.
Exactly.
Very deep.
This is what I mean, that the Psalms express it all.
Yep.
And you just have to stay with it and move through it. And at different points in your life, that vengeful God feels very familiar. And at other points of your life, no way. There's beautiful. Okay, I want to hear some from everybody before we have to end. And we're going to take a few extra minutes because I want to hear the music.
Irina.
Marco and I only managed to take a close look at the first paragraph, and we noticed that mention of music that isn't there in the original. And I wonder if it has anything to do with the music of the spheres that goes back to the ancient Greeks.
Yes. Sherry Gellis?
We sort of focused on the word of his choice of the word fire to reflect the glory and all the other words that are usually used, but fire is such a powerful force in a way, and such a visual image that it brings you into another thought about God, because fire is everything. It's beautiful, it's totally destructive, and it's totally powerful,
Excellent. Thank you, Sherry.
Rabbi, I studied with Annika, who has 2 yard sites today. So we studied in the honor of the 2 people who passed away. We didn't get matched past the first stanza, and then we had a nice cry together. But
beautiful.
but we talked about the star imagery, and she said, you know, it reminds her of the Hannah Senish poem, Yesh Kochavim.
That's a beautiful
Even
connection.
people who say, you know, I'm not spiritual, no, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, they always say, when I look up on the night sky, I see some sort of hand of an intelligent being who put all the stars there for some reason. And the, you know, the chariot of Apollo, that everybody, that if you want to see order in the universe, it is the sun rising and setting every day.
Beautiful.
And the
So
stars.
absolutely.
So,
All right, so we're going to end our conversation with a little music for those who need to leave, do so. But Ira is going to.
Ira, if you want, I have the music. It's the Haydn, Ira. If you wanted to give us one moment of introduction while I call it up and put the text.
And hi, Shari and Debbie in Tel Aviv. So great to have you with us.
All right, the text of the Haydn just went into chat. Ira, do you want to introduce or should I just play out? Ira?
So folks should be able to recognize those words.
I will just say very briefly, this is one of Haydn's most famous works. It's an oratorio that he composed in the very late 1790s. And it's a three-part work. Most of the text comes from the book of Genesis, but obviously the part that we're focusing on, which comes at the end of the first part, which comes after God has created light. And that's when this section of the oratorio, the heavens are telling the glory of God, is presented. Part two is the rest of the creation story up until creating Adam and Eve. And part three, which is based on texts from Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost, nothing biblical, is all about Adam and Eve and being happy in the garden. And it has nothing to do with the fall. It goes it goes up to that point, and there's a big love duet between Adam and Eve, and blah blah blah. Yeah. So Harold, take it away.
All right, I put the text into chat. It is in English, and you can understand what they're singing.
It's wonderful.
Wow, that is so fabulous. And it was good to have the words, Harold, because it was hard for me to understand them just being sung, but I could understand them following with them. Ira, thank you, thank you, thank you for bringing that. It is one of my favorite pieces. And wow, does that take those words and interpret them musically? That would be really to watch how Haydn has interpreted the words musically. So beautiful, so profound. All right, for those who are studying Introduction to Yiddish Culture and Yiddish Literature tonight, I'll see you later tonight. Please make sure you got the syllabus. If you registered, you should have gotten a syllabus. And we are starting a Facebook group also for the class so that during the week people can discuss things and follow up. If you did not get a syllabus, write to Jesse Katz.
Or just check, it really was included in the 2 emails you've gotten. There's
Well, it was
it's
included.
just a little farther down. It's not an attachment.
It's a link. There's a link in the email you got. If you got a link, if you got a thing back from saying you've been registered, look through the right, Harold? I actually haven't seen it. Can you describe that?
You just go down. It's a link to buy the books, and then there's a link to the syllabus. It's clearly there. And we'll see you at 5.
See you at 5.
Right.
Shabbat shalom.